I'm Stephanie Mitchell, 34, a pediatric nurse in Boston who's spent 8 years saving for my dream clinic. Last Sunday, after hosting our annual family reunion, I opened my banking app to check my balance. My heart stopped. All $42,000 gone. When I confronted my brother-in-law Jason, he just snorted and shrugged. "We needed it more than you," he said. Like he was commenting on borrowed sugar instead of my life savings. The casual cruelty of those words shattered something inside me that I'm still trying to repair. Before I dive deeper into my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit subscribe, and stay with me as I share how I discovered that sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who are supposed to love you most. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Massachusetts, I learned early on about the value of hard work and saving for what matters. My parents, both educators, instilled in me and my younger sister, Alicia, the importance of financial responsibility. "Money doesn't grow on trees," my father would say, while my mother added, "but dreams don't grow without a little watering." I took those lessons to heart. After graduating with my nursing degree, I landed a position at Boston Children's Hospital in the pediatric intensive care unit. The work was demanding, 12-hour shifts that often stretched longer. Emotional roller coasters as children fought illnesses and the constant vigilance required to ensure proper care. But I loved it. Each small victory, each child who improved under my care, fueled my passion. While my colleagues splurged on luxury apartments in trendy neighborhoods, designer clothes, or extravagant vacations, I lived modestly. My one-bedroom apartment in Jamaica Plain wasn't glamorous, but it was comfortable and, most importantly, affordable. I drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic that had seen better days but remained reliable. When friends teased me about my frugality, I'd simply smile and say, "I'm investing in something bigger." That something bigger was my dream, opening a pediatric clinic in Roxbury, a neighborhood with limited healthcare access for families. I envisioned a welcoming space where children from all backgrounds could receive quality care regardless of their parents' financial situations. After my shifts at the hospital, I'd often spend hours researching small business loans, healthcare regulations, and property listings in the area. Every month, I faithfully transferred a portion of my paycheck into a dedicated savings account. After 8 years of consistent saving, occasional overtime shifts, and a small inheritance when my parents passed away 5 years ago, I had accumulated just over $42,000. Not enough to fully fund the clinic, but enough for a substantial down payment on a space and initial equipment. I was planning to apply for a small business loan to cover the rest once I found the perfect location. Then there was my sister Alicia. 3 years younger than me, she had always been the free spirit of the family. While I pursued a stable career, she bounced between jobs in retail, hospitality, and administrative work, never quite finding her niche. Despite our different approaches to life, we remained close after our parents' passing, leaning on each other through the grief. When Alicia met Jason Cooper at a friend's wedding 4 years ago, she was immediately smitten. Jason was undeniably charismatic, tall, with an easy smile and stories of his various business ventures that always seemed on the verge of success. I remember meeting him for the first time at a family dinner. He spent the evening regaling us with tales of the startup he was involved with, the connections he had in the business world, and his plans for the future. "This guy's all talk," my cousin Tyler whispered to me as Jason stepped away to take a phone call. But Alicia was captivated, and within 6 months, they were engaged. Their wedding was a lavish affair, much more expensive than I thought either of them could afford. When I tentatively asked Alicia about the cost, she waved away my concerns. "Jason has investors lined up for his new project. We're celebrating in advance." The years following their marriage followed a pattern. Jason would announce a new business opportunity that required initial investment. There would be excitement, plans, sometimes even rented office space, but inevitably, each venture would fizzle out with vague explanations about market conditions or partner disagreements. Meanwhile, Alicia took on more work hours to support them. Her initial pride in Jason's entrepreneurial spirit slowly giving way to strained smiles and changed subjects when career topics arose. There had been smaller financial red flags before. 2 years ago, Jason had asked to borrow $800 for what he called business development costs. After 3 months without repayment or mention of the loan, I gently reminded him. He seemed genuinely surprised, as if the money had slipped his mind completely, but promised to repay me next week. It took 4 more reminders and 6 months before I saw that money again. Last Christmas, Alicia called asking if I could help them cover their rent, just this once, because a guaranteed payment was delayed. I sent $1,200, telling myself it was really for my sister's stability. That money was never referenced again, despite my occasional hints about tight budgets. Still, these were relatively small amounts concerning. Yes, but family helps family. I never imagined Jason would cross the line from opportunistic borrowing to outright theft, especially not on such a devastating scale. After our parents passed away in a car accident 5 years ago, I naturally stepped into the role of family anchor. I hosted the holidays, coordinated birthday celebrations, and initiated our tradition of annual family reunions. These gatherings became increasingly important to me, a way to honor my parents' emphasis on family bonds and create spaces where connections could be nurtured despite our losses. This year's reunion had special significance for me. I was planning to share my clinic plans with extended family members, hoping some might have connections or insights to offer. I had even prepared a simple presentation with projected costs, potential locations, and service offerings. My dream was taking tangible shape, and I was eager to include my family in this milestone. The money in my savings account wasn't just currency to me. Each dollar represented extra shifts during flu seasons, packed lunches instead of takeout, weekends spent working when friends were traveling. More than that, it embodied my parents' legacy, their belief in serving others and building something meaningful. That money was earmarked for helping children in underserved communities, for creating a space of healing and care that would outlast me. I never thought I'd have to defend those dreams from someone who was supposed to be family. The week before the reunion, my apartment transformed from a peaceful retreat into a whirlwind of preparation. I took Friday off work to deep clean, grocery shop, and decorate. The refrigerator overflowed with ingredients for my mother's traditional recipes, her famous potato salad, apple pie with cinnamon crumble topping, and marinated grilled chicken that always disappeared within minutes. "You're going overboard again, Steph," my best friend Dana commented as she helped me arrange extra folding chairs around my modest living room. "Your family would be happy with takeout pizza and paper plates." "It's not just about the food," I explained, adjusting a photo display featuring family moments from previous years. "It's about creating something special. A space where everyone feels the connection Mom and Dad worked so hard to nurture." Dana gave me a knowing smile. "Your parents would be proud of how you've kept everyone together." Saturday morning arrived with perfect late spring weather, sunshine streaming through windows and a gentle breeze ideal for keeping the apartment comfortable despite the inevitable crowding. My Aunt Linda and Uncle Frank arrived first, bearing homemade bread and family photo albums. "Let me help with the setup," Linda offered, immediately heading to the kitchen to arrange appetizer platters. Frank settled in the living room, spreading old photographs across the coffee table. "Found these in the attic last month," he explained. "Your mom in high school, some baby pictures of you and Alicia." Cousins filtered in throughout the early afternoon, Tyler with his new girlfriend, Maddie with her husband and toddler twins, several others with significant others and children in tow. The apartment hummed with conversation, laughter, and the squeals of kids discovering the basket of toys I'd prepared for the younger attendees. Alicia and Jason arrived last, nearly 2 hours after the stated start time. I'd grown accustomed to their tardiness at family functions and had planned accordingly, but couldn't help noticing their dramatic entrance. Alicia wore a new dress I recognized from a high-end boutique we'd browsed together months ago, the one I'd admired but couldn't justify purchasing at its $300 price tag. Jason sported a designer watch that caught the light as he greeted everyone with his characteristic backslapping hugs. "Sorry we're late," Alicia offered, kissing my cheek. Traffic was insane. Jason handed me a mid-range bottle of wine. "Place looks great, Steph. Always the perfect hostess, aren't you?" His compliment carried an undercurrent I couldn't quite identify, something between admiration and resentment. The afternoon progressed pleasantly despite the undercurrents. We shared a buffet-style lunch on the patio, caught up on family news, and cooed over photos of new babies and home renovations. Around 4 o'clock, I gathered everyone for my brief presentation about the clinic plans. "I've been saving for this since graduation," I explained, showing printouts of potential locations in Roxbury. The neighborhood has only one pediatric provider for over 15,000 children, many from families without reliable transportation to reach other facilities. Family members responded with enthusiasm and supportive questions. My cousin Tyler, who worked in commercial real estate, offered to connect me with property managers who might offer favorable terms. Aunt Linda, a retired school administrator, suggested partnerships with local schools for preventive care programs. Throughout my presentation, I noticed Jason's expression shifting between boredom and something sharper, calculation, perhaps. When I mentioned the amount I'd saved and my timeline for securing additional funding, he visibly perked up. 42 grand is a solid chunk of change, he remarked during the subsequent discussion. But starting a medical practice costs hundreds of thousands. You might be better off investing that money somewhere it could grow faster. "I've researched extensively," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "With my savings, small business grants, and a manageable loan, the numbers work." Jason shrugged. "Just saying. There are opportunities out there that could double your money in months, not years. But hey, it's your cash." Later, while serving dessert, I noticed Jason wasn't in the main gathering spaces. Heading to the kitchen for extra spoons, I glimpsed him through the partially opened door of my home office. He appeared to be looking at something on my desk. "Need something?" I asked, pushing the door wider. He turned smoothly, holding his phone. "Just taking a call where it's quieter. Dealing with some business stuff that couldn't wait." He slipped past me into the hallway, rejoining the party with such natural ease that I dismissed my momentary suspicion. As the evening wound down, Alicia pulled me aside while helping clean up the kitchen. "Things have been tough lately," she confided, lowering her voice. "Jason's latest venture fell through last month. The investors backed out at the last minute." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "Is there anything I can do to help?" She shook her head quickly. "We'll manage. Jason has something promising lined up. Just needs some capital to get it off the ground." Her eyes brightened artificially. "Enough about our problems. I'm so excited about your clinic. Mom and Dad would be over the moon." I hugged her, making a mental note to check in more frequently. While Jason's employment history concerned me, I never wanted my sister to struggle. Perhaps I could help her update her resume or connect her with employment opportunities at the hospital. By 11 that night, the last guests had departed. I collapsed onto my couch, surrounded by evidence of a successful gathering, empty serving dishes, rearranged furniture, and the lingering warmth of family connection. Despite the physical exhaustion, I felt fulfilled. The reunion had reinforced my sense of purpose and provided helpful connections for my clinic project. Too tired to begin a thorough cleanup, I decided to relax with a glass of wine and review my financial planning spreadsheets. With a positive response to my presentation, I felt energized to refine my business plan. Perhaps I could even begin approaching properties for viewings next month. With that goal in mind, I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account to review my savings and calculate how much more I might need to secure through loans and grants. That's when my world shattered. The screen glowed with impossible numbers. My savings account balance, $212.47. Just yesterday, it had shown $42,138.59, the accumulation of 8 years of disciplined saving and occasional windfalls. My first thought was a system error. Banks have glitches. These things happen. I logged out and back in. But the number remained unchanged. Heart racing, I navigated to the transaction history. There it was, a transfer of $41,926.12 processed at 7:38 p.m. right around the time I was serving dessert and Jason was supposedly taking a business call in my office. The recipient account wasn't listed in the basic transaction view. With trembling fingers, I called the bank's 24-hour customer service line. After verifying my identity and explaining the situation, the representative confirmed my worst fear. Yes, Ms. Mitchell. I can see the transfer was authorized using your online credentials and security questions. The funds were transferred to an account at First National under the name of Jason Cooper. My stomach lurched. The room seemed to tilt as I processed this information. Jason, my sister's husband, had somehow accessed my banking information and drained my life savings. Questions tumbled through my mind. How did he get my passwords? Did he install some kind of spyware when he was in my office? Had he been planning this for months? This was unauthorized. I managed to tell the representative. I need to report fraud. The next hour passed in a blur of security questions, case numbers, and explanations. The representative was sympathetic but not particularly hopeful. Since the transfer used my credentials and went to a family member, recovery would be complicated. They could freeze further activity and begin an investigation, but I should also file a police report immediately. Sleep was impossible. By 7 a.m., I was in my car driving toward Alicia and Jason's house in Waltham, a suburban community about 20 minutes from my apartment. They had moved there 6 months ago, upgrading from their previous one-bedroom apartment to a small ranch house on a quiet street. At the time, Alicia had explained that they'd found an amazing deal through one of Jason's connections. As I pulled onto their street, my hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles whitened. I rehearsed what to say, trying to find words that would convey the gravity of Jason's actions without completely alienating my sister. Despite everything, Alicia was my only immediate family. I couldn't bear to lose her too. Their driveway held an unexpected surprise, a new SUV I'd never seen before, still shiny with that unmistakable new car gleam. Parked beside it was Alicia's familiar sedan. The sight of that vehicle, likely purchased with my money, sent a fresh wave of anger through me. Before I could ring the doorbell, I heard voices and laughter from the backyard. Following the stone path around the side of the house, I discovered an unexpected scene. Jason was tending to a massive stainless steel grill, also apparently new, while Alicia arranged place settings on an outdoor dining table. A group of people I didn't recognize lounged in Adirondack chairs, drinks in hand despite the early hour. Stephanie. Alicia spotted me first, surprise evident in her voice. We weren't expecting you. Is everything okay? Every rehearsed word evaporated. I stood frozen, taking in the casual weekend gathering, the new possessions. The utter normalcy of their behavior less than 12 hours after stealing my future. Where is it? My voice emerged strangled and unfamiliar. Jason turned from the grill, spatula in hand. Where's what? My money. The words came out louder than intended. The $42,000 you transferred from my account last night. A strange silence fell over the gathering. The strangers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Alicia's face drained of color. Stephanie, what are you talking about? Her voice wavered, but I couldn't tell if from confusion or guilt. I checked my account last night after everyone left. Someone transferred nearly all my savings to Jason's account at 7:38 p.m. The bank confirmed it went to him. Jason's reaction stunned me. Instead of denial or surprise, his expression shifted to something like annoyance, as if I'd brought up an overdue cable bill at an inconvenient moment. Let's talk inside, he said, handing the spatula to one of his friends. This doesn't need an audience. In their kitchen, recently renovated with high-end appliances and stone countertops I definitely hadn't seen during my last visit, Jason leaned against the island with casual confidence. Look, I was going to talk to you about this next week, he began, as if that somehow mitigated the theft. I came across an investment opportunity that's basically guaranteed. We're talking triple returns within 6 months. You stole from me. I could barely form the words past the constriction in my throat. I leveraged available capital for mutual benefit. He countered, his tone maddeningly reasonable. Your money was just sitting there, while this opportunity needed immediate action. The returns will benefit all of us, you included. How did you even access my account? I demanded. He shrugged. Your password wasn't hard to figure out, Mom's birthday plus Dad's birthday. Pretty basic security stuff. And you left your laptop open during the party. I just needed a few minutes. The casual admission of premeditated theft left me speechless. I turned to Alicia, hoping to see shock or disapproval on her face. Instead, I found conflict and something worse, prior knowledge. You knew about this? I whispered. Not exactly, she hedged, avoiding my eyes. Jason mentioned borrowing some money for an investment, but I didn't know the details or that he'd already done it. Borrowing? I repeated incredulously. He emptied my account without permission. That's stealing, Alicia. That's a crime. We needed it more than you, Jason interjected with a dismissive snort. You've got your cushy hospital job with benefits. We're trying to build something from nothing. Besides, it's family money helping family. That money was for my clinic, I said, my voice breaking. 8 years of saving. My dream. Dreams change, he replied with infuriating calm. This investment is a sure thing. Commercial properties in an area slated for major development. We could all benefit. I don't want your investment. I want my money back in my account. Today. Jason's expression hardened. That's not possible. The funds are already committed. Backing out now would mean losing everything. Then I'll go to the police, I stated, pulling out my phone. The bank already has a fraud report. Seriously? His voice took on an edge I'd never heard before. You'd put your own sister's husband in jail over a temporary reallocation of funds? What kind of family does that? Alicia finally spoke up, tears streaming down her face. Stephanie, please. I'm sorry about how this happened, but Jason's right about the investment. It's a real opportunity. Give us 6 months, and you'll get your money back with interest. Looking at my sister, the person who'd shared childhood secrets, who'd cried with me at our parents' funeral, who I'd always tried to protect, I felt a crushing weight of betrayal. She was choosing to stand by Jason's theft rather than acknowledge the violation of trust. That money wasn't just savings. I told her quietly. It was my future. It was going to help children who need care. And you both took it without a second thought. We'll pay you back, Alicia insisted. I promise. But the way her eyes slid away from mine told me everything I needed to know. There would be no repayment, no investment returns, no restoration of what had been stolen, not just my money, but my trust in the people I thought I could count on most. I'm going to the police, I said with finality. What happens next is up to them. As I turned to leave, Jason called after me. You do that, and you'll never see a penny of that money again. Family works things out, Stephanie. Don't make this ugly. The threat hung in the air as I walked away, the weight of it pressing against my shoulders with each step toward my car. In the space of 12 hours, I'd lost my savings, my dream, and potentially my only sister. And somehow, in Jason's twisted logic, I was the one threatening to damage the family. The drive home passed in a blur. Tears obscured my vision so frequently that I had to pull over twice to compose myself. By the time I reached my apartment, exhaustion had settled deep in my bones, the kind no amount of sleep could cure. I collapsed onto my couch, still strewn with evidence of yesterday's family gathering. The contrast between yesterday's warmth and today's desolation felt like a physical pain. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from Alicia. Please call me. We can work this out. Don't do anything hasty. I silenced the notifications and called Dana instead. My best friend since nursing school. Dana had always been my voice of reason during difficult times. She arrived 20 minutes later with coffee and a determined expression. Tell me everything, she instructed, clearing space on the couch beside me. I recounted the theft, the confrontation, Jason's casual admission, and Alicia's complicity. With each detail, Dana's expression darkened. This isn't a family disagreement, Steph, she said when I finished. This is grand theft. You need to file a police report immediately. But what about Alicia? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. If Jason goes to jail, what happens to her? Dana took my hands firmly. Listen to me. If Alicia is choosing to stand by someone who would steal her sister's life savings, that's her decision. You didn't create this situation, they did. Your responsibility right now is to yourself and recovering what's rightfully yours. Her clarity cut through my emotional fog. She was right. No matter how much I loved my sister, I couldn't protect her from the consequences of Jason's actions or her choice to defend them. With Dana beside me for moral support, I called the local police station and arranged to file a report that afternoon. The officer who took my statement was matter-of-fact but compassionate. Unfortunately, we see family financial crimes more often than you'd think, Officer Torres explained as she documented the details. The good news is that you have clear evidence of the unauthorized transfer. The bank records show it went directly to his account, and you filed a fraud report promptly. I nodded, trying to take comfort in her professional assessment. What happens next? We'll investigate, coordinate with the bank's fraud department, and likely interview Mr. Cooper. If the evidence supports criminal charges, the district attorney will decide whether to prosecute. Meanwhile, you should contact a civil attorney about recovering the funds. The mention of attorneys made the situation feel even more surreal. How had family discord escalated to legal proceedings in the span of a day? The following morning brought a new shock. Checking my credit report, something Officer Torres had recommended as a precaution, I discovered 3 credit card accounts opened in my name within the past month. Each was already maxed out with charges totaling nearly $30,000. My hands shook as I reported the additional fraud to the police and credit bureaus. The identity theft specialist I spoke with confirmed my suspicion. Jason had likely gathered enough personal information during his access to my home office to open fraudulent accounts. The credit cards had been mailed to an address I didn't recognize, probably a P.O. box he had set up specifically for this purpose. This suggests premeditation, the specialist explained. It wasn't an impulsive act. He was systematically setting this up for some time. The realization that Jason had been planning to steal from me for weeks or even months made me physically ill. How many family gatherings had he attended while secretly plotting to take everything I had worked for? As news of the situation spread through the family, people began taking sides. Most expressed shock and support for me, but a few suggested I was overreacting to what they characterized as a misunderstanding or family loan gone wrong. Jason said you verbally agreed to invest in his property development, my cousin Marcus claimed when he called. He says you're just having buyer's remorse. That's absolutely false. I responded, anger replacing some of my earlier hurt. He accessed my accounts without permission and transferred the money without my knowledge. Well, family should work these things out privately, Marcus replied uncomfortably. Involving the police seems extreme. I ended the call abruptly, adding Marcus to my growing mental list of family members I couldn't currently trust. The divisions were becoming clearer each day, and it was painful to discover who believed Jason's lies. Alicia's behavior shifted dramatically as the week progressed. Her initial flood of apologetic texts gave way to defensive messages, then accusatory ones, and finally silence. Through mutual family members, I learned she was claiming I had promised to help them financially, but had changed my mind and fabricated the theft story out of spite. The complete reversal of truth was breathtaking. I had expected many difficult emotions in this ordeal, but I hadn't anticipated having to defend my own victimhood. 10 days after discovering the theft, I received a text from an unknown number. Drop the charges if you know what's good for you. Family problems should stay in the family. Though the message wasn't signed, the implied threat was clear. I forwarded it to Officer Torres, who added it to the case file and advised me to document any further communications. Unfortunately, intimidation tactics are common in these situations, she explained. The perpetrator realizes the serious consequences they're facing and tries to pressure the victim into withdrawing the complaint. The harassment escalated. Anonymous calls came at all hours, always from different numbers. Most hung up when I answered, but occasionally I'd hear breathing or a muffled voice before the line went dead. Twice I returned home to find my mail scattered across the entryway of my apartment building, as if someone had gone through it looking for sensitive information. I began to feel unsafe in my own home. I installed new locks, a security camera at my door, and changed all my passwords and security questions. The mental toll was becoming unbearable. I started missing shifts at work, unable to focus on patient care when my own life was unraveling. My supervisor, Dr. Watkins, called me into her office after my third late arrival in 2 weeks. "Stephanie, this isn't like you," she said, concern evident in her voice. "What's going on?" The simple kindness broke through my carefully constructed professional facade. Through tears, I explained the situation, the theft, the family division, the ongoing harassment. Dr. Watkins listened attentively, then offered me something I desperately needed: practical support. "Take 2 weeks of paid personal leave," she suggested. "Use the time to work with the police, secure your accounts, and consult with an attorney. Your position will be waiting when you return." Her understanding was a rare bright spot in the darkening landscape of my life. With time away from work, I could finally focus on addressing the situation fully. The attorney I consulted, Elaine Mendez, specialized in financial crimes and identity theft. After reviewing my documentation, she was blunt but encouraging. "You have a strong case, both criminally and civilly," she assured me. "The evidence of fraud is clear, and his admission during your confrontation supports your account. However, recovering the actual funds may be challenging if he's already spent or hidden the money." "I don't even care about punishment," I admitted. "I just want my savings back so I can move forward with my life." Elaine nodded understanding. "We'll file civil proceedings immediately and request an emergency freeze on his assets to prevent further dissipation of funds. Meanwhile, the criminal investigation will proceed on its own track." As I left her office with a folder of legal documents and a marginally lighter heart, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but unlike the harassment calls, this one showed a local area code. I answered cautiously. "Ms. Mitchell? This is Detective Ramirez with the Financial Crimes Unit. We've just arrested Jason Cooper on multiple counts of fraud related to a separate case. We'd like you to come in to discuss how this might relate to your situation." The news sent a wave of conflicting emotions through me: relief that Jason's crimes were being taken seriously, worry for my sister, and a flicker of hope that this development might help recover my stolen savings. What I couldn't have anticipated was how this arrest would crack open a much larger web of deception, or that my sister would soon appear at my door with revelations that would change everything. The morning after Jason's arrest, I arrived at the hospital for an unavoidable meeting with the pediatric department heads despite my personal leave. We had been planning a community outreach program for months, and I couldn't bring myself to abandon the project entirely. But focusing on vaccination schedules and parent education materials felt nearly impossible with my personal life in shambles. "Stephanie, you seem distracted," Dr. Martin, the chief of pediatrics, noted after I failed to respond to a direct question for the second time. "Is everything all right?" "I'm sorry," I murmured, embarrassed by my lack of professionalism. "I've been dealing with some personal issues." After the meeting, Dr. Martin asked me to stay behind. A distinguished physician in his late 50s with a reputation for exceptional clinical judgment and straightforward communication, he had been a mentor since my early days at the hospital. "I don't mean to pry," he began, closing the conference room door, "but I've noticed a change in you these past 2 weeks. Missed shifts, incomplete documentation, circles under your eyes. This isn't the Stephanie Mitchell I know." The genuine concern in his voice threatened to unravel my carefully maintained composure. I'd been so focused on appearing strong, on not letting Jason's actions destroy everything in my life, that I hadn't acknowledged how deeply the situation was affecting me. "I've had a significant personal setback," I admitted, choosing my words carefully. "A family member stole my savings, the money I was planning to use for the clinic. There are ongoing legal proceedings, and it's been challenging." Dr. Martin's expression shifted from concern to shock. "The clinic you've been planning for years? All of your savings?" I nodded, fighting back tears. $42,000. plus identity theft and fraudulent credit cards in my name. My God, Stephanie. Why didn't you say something sooner? I didn't want to bring personal problems into my professional life. I explained. And frankly, I'm embarrassed. I should have been more careful, more aware. Dr. Martin shook his head firmly. Being victimized by someone you trusted doesn't reflect poorly on you. It reflects poorly on them. He paused, considering something. The hospital's victim support program isn't just for patients, you know. We have resources for staff dealing with personal crises too, legal referrals, counseling services, even emergency loans in some situations. The kindness of this offer, so unexpected after weeks of family members questioning my account and minimizing Jason's actions, broke through my last defenses. For the first time since discovering the theft, I allowed myself to cry openly, releasing the anxiety, betrayal, and fear I'd been suppressing. Dr. Martin waited patiently, offering a box of tissues and the simple gift of non-judgmental presence. When I finally regained composure, he provided contact information for the support services and insisted I use them. Your dream of that clinic is important, he added as I prepared to leave. Not just to you, but to the community that would benefit from it. Don't give up on it yet. I left the hospital feeling marginally more hopeful than when I'd arrived. The road ahead remained daunting, but I no longer felt completely alone on the journey. That tentative hope was immediately tested when I arrived home to find Alicia sitting on the floor outside my apartment door, her face tear-streaked and her normally impeccable appearance disheveled. Alicia? What are you doing here? I asked, instinctively stepping back. After everything that had happened, I wasn't sure I was ready for another confrontation. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. I need to talk to you, Steph. Please. Against my better judgment, and probably against the advice my lawyer would give, I unlocked the door and let her in. She entered hesitantly, as if expecting to be ejected at any moment. In my living room, Alicia perched on the edge of the couch, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles whitened. I remained standing, unwilling to fully let down my guard. Jason's been arrested. She began, her voice barely above a whisper. I know. The detective called me. She nodded, staring at the floor. What you don't know is that I'm pregnant. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My sister, pregnant with her first child, our parents' first grandchild, was facing this nightmare situation alone. How far along? I managed to ask. 14 weeks. I was waiting until the second trimester to tell everyone. A bitter laugh escaped her. I had this whole announcement planned for the family reunion, but Jason said we should wait. Now I understand why. I sank into the armchair across from her, trying to process this new complexity. Alicia, I'm so sorry about the baby. But that doesn't change what Jason did. I know. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly for the first time. I'm not here to defend him anymore, Stephanie. I'm here because there's more you need to know and because... Her voice broke. Because I'm terrified. Over the next hour, Alicia revealed the full extent of Jason's deceptions, a reality far darker than I had imagined. His business ventures had primarily been fronts for increasingly risky gambling activities. What had started as sports betting had evolved into high-stakes poker games with people who didn't take losses lightly. The night before the reunion, 2 men came to our house, she explained, shivering at the memory. They told Jason he had 48 hours to pay $60,000 or they'd collect in other ways. They looked at me when they said it. The implication made my blood run cold. Why didn't you call the police? Jason said they had connections in the department, that reporting would only make things worse. She wrapped her arms around herself protectively. I believed him because I wanted to. It was easier than accepting that my husband had put us in danger with no way out. So he stole my money to pay gambling debts, I concluded, the pieces finally fitting together. Not for an investment opportunity. Alicia nodded miserably. I think he planned to take some from you all along. He'd been asking questions about your finances for months, casual things that didn't seem suspicious at the time. When he found out exactly how much you had saved, it matched what he needed almost perfectly. Did you know he was going to take it? I had to ask, though part of me dreaded the answer. Not until after, she insisted, tears flowing freely again. He came home that night acting strangely elated. When I asked what happened, he said he'd solved our problem and showed me the bank transfer on his phone. I was horrified, Stephanie. We fought all night about it. But the next day, when I came to confront him, "You defended him," I reminded her. She looked away, shame evident in her posture. "He told me if I didn't back him up, those men would come after both of us. He said you could afford the loss." But we were fighting for our lives. Her hands moved protectively to her stomach. "I was trying to protect my baby. I'm so sorry." The rawness of her pain was impossible to dismiss, regardless of how betrayed I still felt. This was my little sister, manipulated, threatened, and now carrying an innocent life in the midst of chaos. "Where are you staying now?" I asked, practical concerns temporarily overriding the emotional complexity. "A motel near the highway." I was afraid to go home after they arrested Jason. Those men might come looking for their money. The decision formed before I could second-guess it. "You'll stay here tonight. We'll figure out next steps tomorrow." Relief flooded her face. "Really? After everything? You're still my sister," I said simply. "And that's my niece or nephew. But Alicia, I need complete honesty from now on. No more covering for Jason." She nodded vigorously. "I'll tell the police everything I know." I should have done it from the beginning. As I prepared the guest room for her, my phone rang, Detective Ramirez calling with an update that would further complicate our already tangled situation. "Ms. Mitchell, we've uncovered something significant in Mr. Cooper's case. It appears your brother-in-law has been arrested twice before for similar schemes in other states, under different names. He has a pattern of targeting family members of his romantic partners." The revelation that Jason was essentially a career con artist specialized in manipulating family connections sent me reeling. Poor Alicia hadn't just married an opportunistic gambler, she'd been deliberately targeted by a predator who saw her family connections as a resource to exploit. "There's more," Detective Ramirez continued. "We've obtained a warrant to search additional financial accounts associated with Mr. Cooper. Preliminary findings suggest he may have hidden assets in offshore accounts. We're working with federal authorities to trace the money." A spark of hope ignited. "Does that mean my savings might be recoverable?" "It's possible," the detective confirmed cautiously. "These investigations take time. But the fact that your case connects to a larger pattern of fraud gives it additional priority. We'll keep you updated as we learn more." After ending the call, I sat heavily on the edge of my bed, overwhelmed by the day's revelations. My sister was pregnant and in danger. Her husband was a serial con artist. My savings might be recoverable, but the process would likely take months or years. And somewhere in the background, my dream of opening a pediatric clinic, the goal that had guided my decisions for nearly a decade, seemed to be slipping further away with each new complication. Yet amid the chaos, I found myself making a difficult but necessary decision. I would continue pursuing justice through legal channels, but I would also protect and support my sister through her pregnancy. The path forward wasn't clear, but I knew I couldn't abandon either principle, seeking accountability and offering compassion, without losing an essential part of myself in the process. That night, with Alicia sleeping in my guest room and my future still shrouded in uncertainty, I made a promise to myself: whatever happened with Jason and the money, I wouldn't let this betrayal destroy my dream permanently. I might need to find a different path, a different timeline, or different resources. But I would find a way to create the clinic these children needed. It was this conviction, however tentative, that finally allowed me to fall into an exhausted sleep, the first uninterrupted rest I'd had since discovering the theft nearly 2 weeks earlier. The courthouse hallway echoed with footsteps and muffled conversations as I sat on a wooden bench outside courtroom C, waiting for Jason's preliminary hearing to begin. 6 weeks had passed since his arrest, and today marked my first time seeing him since the confrontation in his kitchen. Beside me, Alicia fidgeted with the sleeve of her maternity blouse. At 18 weeks pregnant, her condition was now visible beneath the loose-fitting top. She had moved from my guest room to a small apartment nearby. found with the help of a victims advocacy group specializing in domestic financial abuse. Are you sure you want to be here? I asked her for the third time that morning. Your statement is already on record. You don't have to face him in person. She squared her shoulders with determination. I need to see this through, Steph. For myself, for the baby, and for you. The doors opened, and our attorney, Elaine Mendez, emerged. They're ready for us, she announced, her professional demeanor tempered with compassion. Remember, this is just a preliminary hearing to establish probable cause. The actual trial comes later if the judge determines there's sufficient evidence, which in this case is virtually certain. We followed her into the courtroom, a space more austere than the dramatic versions portrayed in television shows. The gallery was sparsely populated, a few reporters. Several unfamiliar faces who might have been connected to Jason's other victims, and to my surprise, Dr. Martin from the hospital, who nodded encouragingly when he caught my eye. Jason sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, his once charismatic presence diminished by institutional confinement. When he turned and saw us, his expression cycled rapidly through surprise, calculation, and a manipulative softening I recognized from countless family gatherings. He attempted a smile that neither Alicia nor I returned. The proceedings moved with bureaucratic efficiency. The prosecutor outlined the charges: grand theft, identity theft, fraud across multiple states, and violation of probation from previous convictions. Detective Ramirez testified about the evidence recovered from Jason's home and electronic devices, including detailed notes on my financial accounts and similar research on 3 other potential victims. When the judge ruled there was ample probable cause to proceed to trial, Jason's public defender immediately proposed a plea agreement. The prosecutor requested time to consult with victims, and the court adjourned for a 15-minute recess. In a small conference room, the prosecutor explained the proposed deal. Cooper would plead guilty to the primary charges in exchange for a sentence of 4 years, with eligibility for parole after serving 18 months. Most importantly for you, Ms. Mitchell, he would agree to full restitution of the stolen funds as a condition of any future parole. Where would this restitution come from? I asked skeptically. If he had legitimate money, he wouldn't have stolen mine. That's where things get interesting, the prosecutor replied. The federal investigation has located approximately $175,000 in an offshore account under one of Cooper's aliases. They believe this represents proceeds from multiple victims. If the plea is accepted, those funds would be seized and distributed proportionally to confirmed victims. Alicia and I exchanged glances. The possibility of actually recovering my savings, which I had begun to think of as permanently lost, suddenly seemed real. I support the plea agreement, I decided after consulting with Elaine. Guaranteed partial recovery is better than the uncertainty of a trial, even if it means a potentially shorter sentence. Alicia nodded agreement. I just want this chapter closed so I can focus on the baby and rebuilding my life. With our consent, the plea deal was finalized that afternoon. Jason would be sentenced the following month, and the process of recovering funds would begin immediately thereafter. As we left the courthouse, I felt a weight lifting, not completely gone, but substantially lighter. What now? Alicia asked as we stood on the courthouse steps. Now we heal, I replied, and we move forward. Moving forward proved both easier and harder than anticipated. The emotional aftermath of betrayal doesn't disappear with legal resolution, but practical steps toward recovery provided tangible progress to focus on. With regular counseling through the hospital's employee assistance program, I gradually processed the complex grief of family betrayal. My work performance stabilized as I implemented the coping mechanisms my therapist suggested, and I found unexpected comfort in the structured routine of hospital shifts. Alicia's pregnancy progressed normally, providing a hopeful counterpoint to the ongoing legal proceedings. We attended her 20-week ultrasound together, both crying when the technician announced she was having a girl. The moment crystallized something important. Regardless of Jason's actions, this child represented a new generation of our family. one we could nurture with the values our parents had instilled in us. 3 months after the court hearing, I received notification that $36.742 had been recovered and would be transferred to my account, approximately 87% of what Jason had stolen. While not the full amount, it represented enough to move forward with modified clinic plans. That same week, Dr. Martin requested a meeting with me. I arrived at his office expecting a discussion about the community outreach program we'd been developing. But he had something else entirely in mind. "I've been thinking about your clinic concept," he began without preamble. "The hospital board has been exploring satellite locations in underserved areas. Your Roxbury proposal aligns perfectly with their strategic objectives." My pulse quickened. "Are you suggesting the hospital might be interested in the project?" "More than interested," he replied, sliding a folder across his desk. "I've taken the liberty of drafting a partnership proposal. The hospital would provide primary funding and administrative support, while you would serve as clinical director, implementing your vision for pediatric care in the community." I opened the folder with trembling hands, scanning the document that outlined exactly the opportunity I dreamed of, with institutional backing that would make it far more sustainable than my original solo venture. "Why would you do this?" I asked, overwhelmed by the unexpected support. Dr. Martin smiled. "Because it's a sound medical and business decision. The community needs the services, and you have the passion and expertise to deliver them effectively. Your personal setback doesn't change that reality." He paused, then added more personally, "And because I've watched you handle an impossible situation with grace and resilience. Those are precisely the qualities needed to succeed in community medicine." 2 weeks later, I presented the modified clinic proposal to the hospital board with Dr. Martin's support. They approved it unanimously, with a targeted opening date 6 months later. The timeline would allow for property acquisition, renovations, and staffing, all handled with the hospital's considerable resources. While I worked with the hospital's development team on clinic preparations, Alicia secured a position as an administrative assistant at a local community college. The stable employment with benefits represented a crucial step toward her independent future. She moved to a 2-bedroom apartment in preparation for the baby, furnishing the nursery with secondhand items we refinished together during weekend projects that gradually rebuilt our sisterly bond. 5 months after Jason's sentencing, an unexpected development accelerated our healing process. Alicia received a call from Detective Ramirez. "We've located additional funds in an account under your husband's maternal grandmother's name," she explained. "Forensic accounting confirms he was the actual controller of the account. After legal proceedings, approximately $28,000 has been cleared for distribution to victims, including both of you." The additional recovery meant my savings were almost completely restored, while Alicia received compensation for the fraudulent debts Jason had accumulated in her name. The financial breathing room allowed her to establish an education fund for her daughter and begin rebuilding her credit. As my clinic project progressed from planning to implementation, I found myself working closely with community leaders in Roxbury who embraced the concept with enthusiasm. A local business owner, Mrs. Josephine Washington, approached me after a community meeting. "My grandson has asthma," she explained, "and getting him to appointments across town is nearly impossible with my work schedule. What you're building here will change lives." She owned a commercial building on the neighborhood's main street and offered space for the clinic at significantly reduced rent. "The second floor has been vacant for years," she explained. "I'd rather see it used for helping children than sitting empty." The hospital's legal team negotiated a favorable 5-year lease, and renovation began immediately. What had once been a dusty storage space gradually transformed into the warm, welcoming environment I had envisioned: bright colors, child-friendly furnishings, and state-of-the-art medical equipment. Throughout this period of rebuilding, I maintained minimal contact with the extended family members who had defended Jason or questioned my account of events. Some eventually reached out with apologies as the full extent of his deceptions became public, while others remained distant. I accepted the apologies graciously but focused my emotional energy on the relationships that had proven supportive during the crisis: Dana's unwavering friendship, Dr. Martin's mentorship, and my slowly healing connection with Alicia. 1 year after discovering the theft, I stood beside Dr. Martin, Alicia, holding her 2-month-old daughter Emma, and hospital administrators at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Mitchell Family Pediatric Clinic. Local news covered the event, interviewing community members about the impact of having accessible healthcare in their neighborhood. As I cut the ribbon and led the first tour of the facility, I caught Alicia's eye across the room. She smiled and nodded slightly, both of us acknowledging the incredible journey from devastation to renewal. My savings had been stolen, but my dream had survived, transformed and strengthened by the very crisis that had threatened to destroy it. That evening, after the celebrations concluded and the last visitors departed, I walked alone through the quiet clinic rooms, running my hand along the examination tables, supply cabinets, and children's books carefully arranged in waiting areas. I felt a profound sense of accomplishment tinged with wonder at the unexpected path that had brought me here. My original plan, modest and independent, had evolved into something more robust and sustainable than I could have created alone. The partnership with the hospital provided resources I never would have accessed otherwise, while the community connections formed during development ensured the clinic truly served local needs. Perhaps most importantly, I had discovered resilience I didn't know I possessed. The betrayal had tested everything: my financial security, family bonds, professional focus, and personal trust. Yet here I stood, not just surviving but thriving in ways I couldn't have imagined during those dark days after discovering the theft. As I turned out the lights and prepared to lock up for the evening, I paused at the clinic entrance where a small plaque beside the door read, "Dedicated to Mary and Robert Mitchell, who taught their daughters that serving others is life's greatest privilege." My parents would never see this place that honored their values, but I felt their presence in every aspect of the journey that had created it. Tomorrow would bring the clinic's first patients, children whose lives might be changed by the care they received here. Whatever challenges arose, I now knew with certainty that I could face them. Some dreams take unexpected detours, but find their way to reality nonetheless. 1 year later, I sat in my office at the Mitchell Family Pediatric Clinic, reviewing patient files from our first 12 months of operation. The numbers told a remarkable story: over 1,200 children served, 85% from families who previously lacked consistent pediatric care. Vaccination rates in the neighborhood had increased by 28%, and emergency room visits for childhood asthma had decreased by nearly a third. Beyond statistics, individual success stories filled my bulletin board: thank you notes from parents, crayon drawings from young patients, and photos of children whose health had improved under our care. The clinic had become exactly what I'd envisioned: a place of healing, prevention, and community support. A knock at my door interrupted my reflections. Alicia entered, 13-month-old Emma perched on her hip. My niece's dark curls and bright eyes immediately drew my attention, as they always did. "Are we still on for lunch?" Alicia asked, shifting Emma to her other hip. "Absolutely," I replied, closing my laptop and gathering my purse. "Just let me sign these last forms for Dr. Rodriguez." As we walked to the cafe around the corner, a weekly tradition we'd established, I marveled at how far we'd come. Alicia had completed her associate's degree in business administration while working part-time and raising Emma. She'd recently accepted a full-time position with the community college's outreach program, coordinating educational opportunities for single parents. "Have you heard anything more from the attorney?" she asked as we settled at our usual table. I knew she meant the ongoing civil proceedings against Jason, though he remained in prison serving his sentence. Legal matters continued to unfold as additional victims came forward and authorities uncovered more hidden assets. "Another recovery distribution is scheduled for next month," I confirmed. "Not a large amount, but enough to add to Emma's college fund." Alicia smiled, watching her daughter happily arrange crackers on the high chair tray. "Sometimes I still can't believe we made it through all that." Remember where we were 2 years ago? The contrast was indeed striking. 2 years earlier, I had been frantically reporting fraud and confronting Jason while Alicia grappled with pregnancy and betrayal. Now we sat together as stronger women, rebuilding our lives and relationship with intentionality. I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness lately, Alicia said carefully, testing waters we still navigated with occasional caution. Not of Jason. I don't think I'll ever fully forgive what he did to all of us. But I've been working on forgiving myself for not seeing the warning signs, for defending him initially, for putting you through that pain. I reached across the table to squeeze her hand. You were a victim too, Alicia. Different circumstances, same perpetrator. Still, I made choices, she insisted. I've needed to own those to move forward. Her maturity impressed me. Motherhood and adversity had transformed my once impulsive sister into a thoughtful, resilient woman. What about you? She asked. Have you forgiven the family members who sided with Jason? It was a complicated question I'd wrestled with extensively in therapy. I've reached different places with different people, I admitted. Aunt Linda and Uncle Frank made genuine amends. They've supported the clinic and been there for both of us consistently since. I've fully reconciled with them. And Marcus? She pressed, naming our cousin who had been Jason's most vocal defender. We're civil when we see each other at family gatherings, but the trust is gone, I acknowledged. I've accepted that some relationships will never be the same, and that's okay. Boundaries aren't punishment, they're protection. Emma interrupted our philosophical discussion by enthusiastically dropping crackers for me to retrieve, giggling each time I complied with her game. Her innocent joy provided perfect perspective on our conversation about forgiveness and consequences. She's the best thing to come from all this, Alicia said softly, watching her daughter. I wouldn't have chosen this path, but I can't regret where it led. After lunch, we walked to the nearby park where Emma could toddle around the playground designed for very young children. As she explored with the fearless determination of a newly walking toddler, Alicia and I sat on a bench in the spring sunshine. Do you remember that day in court? Alicia asked. When you told me now we heal and we move forward? I nodded, recalling that pivotal moment on the courthouse steps. I didn't really believe it then, she confessed. I couldn't imagine ever feeling whole again, or having a normal life, or rebuilding our relationship. It seemed like pretty words without substance. But here we are, I observed, watching Emma confidently navigate the small slide. Here we are, she agreed. Not where we expected to be, but somewhere meaningful nonetheless. The observation perfectly captured my own journey. The clinic that finally existed wasn't the independent practice I'd originally imagined, but the hospital partnership had created something more sustainable and impactful. My savings had been stolen and largely recovered, but the experience had connected me with mentors and resources I might never have accessed otherwise. Even my understanding of family had evolved. The betrayal had revealed weaknesses in some relationships, but strengthened others. New connections had formed with unexpected allies like Dr. Martin, who had become a trusted mentor, and Mrs. Washington, whose community insights proved invaluable for the clinic's success. Later that evening, I attended a neighborhood health committee meeting where the clinic's one-year results were presented to community leaders. The data confirmed what we already knew anecdotally. Access to consistent pediatric care was changing outcomes for Roxbury's children. After the formal presentation, Mrs. Washington approached me, her normally serious expression softened with approval. "You've done good work here, Dr. Mitchell," she said, using the honorific title despite my frequent reminders that I was a nurse practitioner, not a physician. "My grandson's asthma attacks are down to almost none since he's been seeing your team regularly." "I'm glad to hear that," I replied sincerely. "How is his medication management going?" "Much better with those spacers you provided for his inhaler. He can use it properly now." She paused, then added, "You know, when you first proposed this clinic, some folks were skeptical. Another outsider with big ideas, they thought. But you proved them wrong by listening to what we actually needed, not just imposing your vision." Her observation touched on something fundamental I'd learned through the entire ordeal. My original clinic concept had been worthy but limited by my singular perspective. The collaborative approach necessitated by the hospital partnership had ultimately created something more responsive to community needs. Similarly, my personal recovery from Jason's betrayal had required accepting help rather than handling everything independently as I'd initially attempted. Dana's emotional support, Dr. Martin's professional guidance, and even Alicia's eventual partnership in healing had all contributed to an outcome stronger than what I could have achieved alone. Walking home that evening, I reflected on the complex journey of the past 2 years. The theft had been a violation of my finances, my trust, and my sense of family security. The pain and anxiety of those early days remained vivid in my memory. Yet the crisis had also catalyzed growth, connection, and perspective that might otherwise have taken decades to develop. I now understood boundaries not as walls, but as necessary definitions of healthy relationships. I recognized that vulnerability, while risky, creates space for authentic connection. Most importantly, I had learned that resilience isn't about avoiding damage, but about rebuilding with greater wisdom afterward. In my apartment, I opened the special box where I kept meaningful mementos. Among photos of my parents, cards from grateful patients, and the ribbon from the clinic's opening ceremony, I added the community health report from tonight's meeting, tangible evidence that dreams can survive even devastating setbacks. The clinic was thriving. My sister was building a stable life for herself and Emma. I had found professional fulfillment beyond what I'd originally imagined. None of it had come easily, and the path had included detours I would never have chosen. But standing here now, I could acknowledge both the painful reality of betrayal and the powerful story of recovery that followed. Some experiences change you permanently. Jason's theft had altered my understanding of family, trust, and resilience in ways that could never be undone. Yet I had discovered that being changed doesn't mean being diminished. Sometimes the breaking creates space for rebuilding something stronger, wiser, and more authentic than what existed before. As I closed the memory box and prepared for bed, I thought about tomorrow's clinic schedule, 28 children whose lives intersected with mine because of a journey that began with devastating loss. Their futures would be different because we had created this space of healing, regardless of the difficult path that led here. Perhaps that's the most profound lesson of all. Our darkest moments don't define us, but they can refine us if we allow the experience to teach rather than merely traumatize. The money Jason stole was eventually recovered, but the insights gained through the ordeal were the true reclamation, a transformation that no theft could ever touch. I wonder if you've ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to unexpected growth or change in your life. How did you navigate that difficult balance between holding people accountable and finding a path toward healing? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please consider subscribing and giving this video a like. Your support helps me continue sharing these personal journeys that remind us all that even in our darkest moments, we can find our way back to light. Thank you for being here with me today, and remember, sometimes our greatest strength emerges from our most painful challenges.